that websites are important in disseminating our research findings to different audiences and reaching different audiences. And in fact, it's a kind of condition of our funding through HERA that we do reach out to different audiences. All of us have filled in a knowledge transfer sections to our bids that are featured in the kind of published documentation from HERA and so on. But what I want us to do is consider how our websites can work to facilitate knowledge transfer and exchange. And although I agree that projects and websites have a multitude of functions, they can be repositories like we talked about yesterday for project data. They can be just a shop window, a platform for publicity, or a means of reaching different audiences, or all of these things and more. Knowledge transfer, I suppose, in the spirit of HERA, suggests exchange. It's not just about targeting different audiences, it's about exchanging knowledge, exchanging information. And with this in mind, I thought it would be good for us to maybe spend some time talking about these issues this afternoon and examining what knowledge transfer or exchange means for us and how our websites are basically going to support this process. So we've also got two platforms to consider here, which again, the session this morning talked a lot about the interface between HERA's central website and our own project websites and the potential for sort of cross-fertilisation and the sharing of knowledge and information between them. And this has the real potential, I think, and so it'd be good to think about ways in which this could also develop over the coming duration of the project in the next couple of years. So on your sheets, there was a couple of issues that were headlined. Issue one was this whole thing about the difference between developing websites as a repository for information. Is there a difference between that and a website that encourages engagement or facilitates knowledge exchange in some way? In general terms, I think it's important for us to think about our websites as these sorts of platforms for exchange and the critical questions that surround this subject. For example, who are we exchanging knowledge with, and how do our websites help us to do this? And I think this is a key question that we need to address, and it sort of feeds into the design of our activities, of our websites themselves. Equally, I think we need to address this balance between the sort of static content and dynamic, and I noticed some even with the project presentations here, there's different attitudes among the projects about static information and dynamic and achieving the right kind of balance between these things. And obviously, it might well be appropriate to the different communities to have different balances with this. Second issue, I suppose, what we could also talk about is the strengths and the limitations of using the web for knowledge transfer activities. It might not necessarily be suitable for everyone. So, web on the one hand provides us with a great opportunity to reach different audiences, to capture data, to publish findings and give research an immediacy that maybe other platforms can't. And we've talked about this, unique attributes, including the kind of immediacy. It promotes a kind of sharing, a work instantaneously, and it, by its very nature, is encouraging a form of knowledge exchange. But also, I think, as Andrew was saying this morning, it's often impossible for us to know how our work is going to be used and appropriated and transformed into other work. So thinking about the kind of potential for projects to have a life of their own and outputs to have a life of their own. We're also sort of providing access, and also there is this blending of the public and the private. And one of the conversations that we had, it's quite funny, a lot of the conversations we had this morning echo our team meeting earlier in this year in Vienna when we discussed a lot of these issues around the website. And as George commented on, the project team, my friend, Roland changes are sort of split, or have been split, on the value of these things. And quite often researchers are thinking, well, I don't really want to kind of share my thoughts, or air my dirty linen in public, where others are sort of saying, no, let's share everything and so on. So there is this kind of blending of the public and the private that perhaps we do need to be aware about too. And quite often, I think what we decided to sort of go down this route of creating a website where there's multi-levels, there's different layers to it, and there's a sort of story to be told. Certain researchers are going to be more active than others, but you can actually follow those researchers in one shape or form, and develop a kind of relationship with them, as well as the work that they produce at the end of the day. So yeah, I suppose in an ideal world, I'm thinking the websites can capture both processes and products. You know, they are a platform for storing and delivering data, but also give people an insight into the research projects as they're taking place. And they obviously encouraging interaction and developing communities of interest too, and arguably they're probably the most cost-effective way of us disseminating a lot of the materials that we create. But we might also think about the limitations of this too, and quite often we have to say, well, how can you sort of measure impact, or just in terms of you've got sort of statistical data and so on, or it's like a needle in a haystack. How are people necessarily going to find you, and how are you going to get your work, your message across? So again, these are sort of things that I think we should talk about, and maybe different types of knowledge exchange as well. And for me, it always hits home with a project as big as this, about the different types of knowledge exchange that is taking place. We obviously have our relationships to HERA. HERA have their relationships to funders and the European Commission and so on, national funding agencies. We have exchange between project teams, between projects themselves, but also our different types of user as well, our scholarly communities, the general public, professional groups, networks, so on. The list goes on. But also perhaps between different media as well. And this is something I'm interested in too, the way in which maybe like a blog or some findings on one site get picked up on another site, and material is used and transformed and so on. So again, let's maybe think about different types of knowledge exchange too. And finally, I think this is perhaps very relevant in our current political and economic climate. It's about how we bring the value of humanities research to a wider community. And I think we all have a vested interest in doing this. When we've sort of we've signed up for the HERA cause and are championing this research. I think we do have a responsibility to respond to this call and promote the humanities as central to European life and identity. And we found this in Vienna too, in a lot of the World Cafe discussions that we had as well, that there are issues of common interest, from societal change, migration, otherness, ideology, nationalism, transnationalism, colonial past, post-colonial futures, and so on. It kind of provides a means of understanding European life today. And I think this is the thing that inspires me when I come to meetings like this, hearing other researchers working in very different fields and environments, but how a lot of the themes and the questions can provoke and make us think about and reflect on our own practice as well. But also, it feeds into this bigger picture of the contribution that the humanities made to life in general. So we do need to think about ways of transcending our disciplines and all the specifics of our project in order to comment on some of these questions and issues. We're continually reminded of the way in which technology, is science feed into a kind of understanding of life and to explain our existence and so on. But that's not thinking about the humanities in the same way, and it's particularly relevant, as I said, in our particular current economic climate, and that we do demonstrate the value of our work. Okay, that's enough of my preamble. I suppose it's over to you now, and thinking about maybe issues that have cropped up or knowledge transfer. Maybe we could even just start off with this, about are we in agreement about the definition of knowledge transfer as a type of exchange, how individual projects conceiving these kind of activities, and how are they going to play out within their web setting? Does anyone want to sort of start or raise a question or share?